We're going to try to keep the next set of answers to about 1 minute. And the next question comes from the Parent Information Resource Center. During the presidential debate, we heard the candidates speak to the importance of early childhood education. What is your view, Mr. Hunter, starting early childhood education, and how will you support the early childhood initiative?
I think that early childhood education is extremely important. I think it had a profound impact on my success. I actually remember back some of my earliest memories, learning how to read in pre-K before I even started kindergarten. I grew up in New York City. We had very, very poor schools in New York City, but we had books. We had people who had the determination and willpower to teach us how to read. And I learned how to read very well. It allowed me to skip 1 grade, and while I was a student in New York, they wanted me to skip another. We want to do everything we can to facilitate early childhood education. And that's very important, particularly right now when we're looking at a potential budget shortfall. One of the first things they're going to do is look to cut these social service programs, look to cut things that impact low-income and poor people. That's why I think it's important that we have elected officials. I've worked at the council for 3 council members. I think there's a lot that we can do as it relates to better grants management, as it relates to getting us out of leasing government property from private developers. We lease government office space from developers who have built on government land. There's a lot of resources that we can find available to continue to fund these kind of things without cutting them.
Thank you. Very brief introduction, if you could, and then we get to the question about early childhood education.
Hi, excuse me for being late. My name is Mark Long. I am a native Washingtonian and graduate of DC Public Schools. I went to Wilson High School, Banneker before that, and went on to Morehouse College in Atlanta. And I'm an education consultant by trade right now, doing work with the city of Atlanta, Delray Beach, Florida, and Houston, Texas. More about me later. Going into the question, I would be definitely very for pre-K education. All of the stats and statistics and research supports that it's crucial right now. Again, jumping around with where we see the greatest disparity in terms of the gap, in terms of the youth in our city. It's over with the African American and the Hispanic population where this pre-K education would be critical, especially if you do it in conjunction with wraparound services to support the families, to support the children in terms of their needs in terms of food, needs in terms of clothing, needs in terms of making sure they have safe shelter. All of these things we have to make, as well as decent health care. All of these things have to be a coordinated effort in the pre-K system if we're really going to close this gap in terms of the educational needs of our children. Thank you.
In terms of early childhood education, I mean, of course, I support doing much more than what we're doing now. I think with any of the problems that we have now, and there's no question about it, we have significant problems in our school system. It's failing. We're going to have to think outside the box. Let me give you an example. You know, this paying kids to learn. At first, I was completely disgusted by it, as are several of the folks up here. And you know, if you haven't heard about it, it's a $2.7 million program. Half of it is funded by the Broad Foundation at Harvard University, so it's privately funded. The other half, so $1.35 million, is taxpayer money. Now, this is a situation, if this works, I mean, come on folks, we have 40 to 50% dropout rates. If this works, this is something we're going to need to continue to do. So in the future, and how I would examine these programs is I think we really need to start to test more, and of course we need to continue to support all options for parents.
Well, Mark Long has been to a number of forums that I've been at, and he stole my line, so I agreed with him enthusiastically. But again, where's the money going to come from? It's great to promise these programs, but where is the money in this time of economic meltdown? Again, you have to address that. And if you just say you promise something and you don't promise where the money's come from, it's an empty promise. We should raise TANF to above poverty. It's now 60% of poverty. Temporary assistance to needy families, wraparound service, fully fund substance abuse, mental health, reopen the 23 neighborhood schools, which first rights are going in charter schools. What was the point of closing them? Huh? What was the rationale? Let's reopen them and put the wraparound services in the school with recreation and so on, so we can really reach the families and the children at the same time. That's the critical way of approaching this, and I've already outlined where the money's come from.
I answered the early childhood question earlier. Very big proponent of it.
If you could focus on what might need to be done next, that's what I was curious about with yours, because you did refer to it earlier.
Well, I think we've got to make sure it's funded and that it's happening. But, I mean, other than that, I can't tell you what about early childhood we did. And I mentioned going down to 3-year-olds. We're doing 4-year-olds now, going down to 3-year-olds. So that's as far as I want to go on that one. I do think, I want to talk a little bit about homeschooling. I also favor homeschooling. I have many friends that do homeschool their children, but I do think there need to be guidelines. And finally, there are. And I think that is important. Charter schools, I have said I've always favored charter schools. I do believe in options and choices, but they need to be monitored. And that is something that should be done, and I think is being done in a better fashion these days. I always thought there should be options. Banneker Academic Model High School, that was my and Dr. Vincent Reed's baby, in order to give young people an opportunity to soar academically and not be made fun of in their local schools. I chaired the committee that brought Banneker forward. I also chaired the committee that got Duke Ellington School of the Arts remodeled. So options I've always favored, even when I didn't favor them initially. When they came up for renewal, I did not oppose them because I do think they are another tool in our toolbox.